rum and coke again. It's been a good day. I'm eating some imitation crab meat, so it's kind of a weird thing to... Hold on. There you go. Okay. Welcome back to the channel. We are covering the Russian Revolution 1917. This is from another Epic History TV. This one was requested, and this one should go up Monday the 20th. It'll be probably in 3 o'clock release Central Time. It is Thursday the 16th, and I am relaxing. So, like and subscribe. I see the history of Russia, World War I videos kind of took off unexpectedly, which is good. I'm getting views from the UK and Russia and Germany and Romania, so that's always cool. For the foreign viewers who seem to care, this is my George Washington. This is my George Washington replica flintlock musket. It's you probably can't read it, but it says London. I'm not flipping you off, I promise. The barrel, don't worry, the barrel only goes about that far, so it's not real. That's it. But it's nice. I got it from Mount Vernon. The company that makes them, the reason why I bring it up is the company that makes them, I just finished the Napoleonic Wars, and the company that makes them, they also make a Napoleon replica gun. So, thought that was pretty cool. And I was asked what this is. This is an old school writing piece. And then it's got some dust on it and it came with a thing where I could make it, where I could make the stuff, but I was never going to do that. That would just be a waste. So it's just going to go back there. Okay. Let's get on with the video. No more talking. I am going to be snacking as I always do. I enjoy my rum and coke, and you're just going to pretend like I'm not. Sorry.
In 1894, Nicholas II became ruler of a Russian empire that stretched from the Baltic to the Pacific, inhabited by 126 million people from 194 ethnic groups. It was a country in which workers and peasants lived in poverty and hardship, while Russia's elite, its imperial family and aristocracy, lived lives of gilded luxury. There was a long history of struggle in Russia against the injustices of the system. And in 1905, a revolution forced the Tsar to allow the creation of a State Duma, or National Assembly. But its power was limited, and the compromise pleased neither the Tsar nor the reformers. In 1914, this divided empire was plunged into fresh crisis by World War. World War I was a disaster for Tsarist Russia. At the front, the country suffered a series of devastating defeats, while at home there were food shortages and economic chaos. The Tsar was held responsible for the crisis. After all, he was now the army's commander-in-chief, and he was standing in the way of government reform. His German-born wife, Empress Alexandra, was even thought to be supporting Germany, while the entire family was said to have fallen under the spell of a Siberian mystic and faith healer, Grigory Rasputin. In December 1916, Rasputin was murdered by Russian aristocrats, possibly with the help of British secret agents, both groups determined to end his influence over the Tsar. But in the eyes of many, the damage had already been done. On the 23rd of February 1917, thousands of women took to the streets of the Russian capital, Petrograd, to mark international...
Is it still called Petrograd? Because I know it is St. Petersburg. Or is that... Yeah. Whatever. You know what I'm saying. Is it still called that way? Or is that... Petrograd, is that local? Or is it just St. Petersburg and that's just what it's known as now? They might tell me. I apologize if they do.
Women's Day and protest over bread shortages. The next day they were joined on the streets by workers and students carrying placards that read, "Down with the Tsar."
That's not good.
Troops ordered to put down the disorder mutinied and joined the protesters instead.
That's really not good.
Tsarist officials were arrested. Prisons and police stations were attacked. Emblems of Tsarist rule smashed and burned. The government had lost control of the capital. The Tsar was told by his ministers that order could only be restored and Russia saved from military defeat if he gave up power. So, on the 2nd of March, Nicholas agreed to abdicate. In just 10 days, 300 years of Romanov rule had come to an end. The February Revolution had been remarkably swift and bloodless, and hopes were now high for the creation of a more democratic, more just Russian state. Members of the State Duma, the National Assembly, had formed a provisional government, which was to hold power until a constituent assembly was elected, to give Russia a new constitution. But in reality, the provisional government shared power with the Petrograd Soviet, a council elected by workers and soldiers that controlled the capital's troops, transport, and communications. The Petrograd Soviet, dominated by the Socialist Revolutionary Party and the Marxist Menshevik Party, was much more radical than the provisional government. Yet it supported the government's decision to continue the war and honor the commitments that Russia had made to the Allies. It was a fateful decision that ultimately played into the hands of one of the smaller parties, the Bolsheviks. Their leader, Vladimir Lenin, recently returned from 16 years in exile, bitterly opposed the imperialist war.
Why was he exiled? Was he exiled because he didn't like the Tsar? I could look these things up, but I'm asking you because I'm trying to be engaging. So.
He also demanded the immediate redistribution of land, from rich landowners to peasants, and the transfer of power from the bourgeois provisional government to the people's soviets or councils that were springing up across Russia. The Bolshevik program was summed up in a simple slogan: bread, peace, and land. And as Russia's economic and military crisis deepened, its appeal to the masses grew and grew. In June,
their goal was absolute distrust As in, he wanted the people to distrust the government? That's how I'm taking it?
A new Russian military offensive ended
And I mean that he's not going to have them distrust him.
in disaster, with 400,000 Russian casualties, massive desertions, and the collapse of army morale and discipline. In July, soldiers and sailors in Petrograd mutinied. They were joined in the streets by workers with Bolshevik support. But troops loyal to the provisional government opened fire on the protesters and dispersed the crowds. A police crackdown followed, leading to the arrest of several Bolshevik leaders, including Leon Trotsky, while Lenin, with the help of Joseph Stalin, fled to Finland, traveling with forged papers under the name of Konstantin Ivanov. A socialist and stirring orator named Alexander Kerensky became Russia's new prime minister and was hailed as the man who would save Russia from anarchy. The army's commander-in-chief, General Kornilov, believed Russia's war effort was being undermined by chaos at home and deliberately sabotaged by men like Lenin, whom he declared a German spy. So in August, he ordered his men to march on Petrograd to restore order. Bolsheviks played a leading role in the city's defense against this attempted military coup. Their most brilliant organizer, Leon Trotsky, was released from prison and sent armed Bolshevik militias, the Red Guards, to defend key points in the city. Strikes by railway workers, many of them Bolshevik supporters, prevented Kornilov from moving his men by rail, and his soldiers began to switch sides, or simply go home. The Kornilov affair cast the Bolsheviks as saviors of the revolution. And by the end of September, they'd gained a majority in the Petrograd Soviet. In October, Lenin decided the time had come. He secretly returned from Finland to Petrograd and began preparing to seize power.
Lenin seemed like quite the power-hungry guy.
On the 25th of October, the Bolsheviks made their move. Red Guards and loyal troops seized key points around the capital, and that night they stormed the provisional government's headquarters at the Winter Palace, an event later immortalized by Bolshevik propaganda and the great Soviet filmmaker Sergei Eisenstein. Kerensky fled the city at the last moment, narrowly avoiding capture. And the next day, at the Second All-Russian Congress of Soviets, Lenin announced the overthrow of the provisional government.
Mush.
The following months saw...
So I'm just asking, does Lenin want this power because he wants the power, or he's doing everything he can to put himself in a situation where he can't be deported, I'll say? That, you know, because he seems like he really came back, stepped in, and he's going for it.
The Bolsheviks consolidate their hold on power, while fighting a brutal civil war against counter-revolutionary or White Russian forces who had foreign support. some whites hoped to put Tsar Nicholas back on the throne. After his abdication, Nicholas and his family had been held under guard at Tsarskoye Selo, outside Petrograd, where they occupied themselves with gardening and other diversions. In summer 1917, the family was sent to Tobolsk in Siberia, where they lived under house arrest in the governor's mansion. The following spring, the Bolsheviks had the family moved to Yekaterinburg. In July 1918, as white forces approached the city, Bolshevik soldiers gathered the whole family in a cellar. The Tsar, his wife, their son Alexei, their 4 daughters, Olga, Tatiana, Maria, and Anastasia, as well as 4 servants, and executed them all. Russia.
Were they coming to free them? I'm going to say yes. I apologize for all the questions.
Civil War was one of the 20th century's most devastating events. An estimated 2 million soldiers lost their lives, while a typhus epidemic and famine claimed the lives of a further 9 million civilians. By the end of 1921, the Bolsheviks had emerged victorious, and under Lenin's determined and uncompromising leadership, set about building a new socialist order. The Soviet Union, created in 1922, emerged as a world superpower following the defeat of Nazi Germany in World War II. But it would always remain a single-party state, where all opposition or dissent was ruthlessly suppressed. Those brief hopes for Russian democracy that flowered amid the euphoria of the February Revolution were extinguished by the Bolshevik October Revolution, and put beyond reach for decades to come. Bridgman Images.
So I like that. That was good. I have more questions. I almost want to see something a little longer, if that makes sense. A little more detail, I guess I should say. But I mean, I didn't know much about it, so obviously I'm learning something. But I just feel like maybe that I have more questions than it would just have been nice to maybe know a little bit more. But you know, you got to sum it all up in an X amount of time. I started in 1890 something with the Tsar. So anyways, this was good. Yeah, if anybody out there has the answers, which seems to be a lot of people who have some knowledge on it, I welcome any and all answers. So I'm going to go ahead and end this here. Appreciate the watch. Give it a thumbs up. That helps me. And until next time, have a good day. Have a good night.